Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
You are about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
All right. We are back at the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Dr. Daliah, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So a few months ago, British officials had, there was a study in the British Medical Journal showing about 82 people have died, according to their records, as it related to using the GLP-1 agonist Ozempic, Mounjaro, for weight loss or for diabetes control. Now the number appears to be up to 107. Now this is coming from UK officials, so this isn't necessarily coming from, America and all that, but seeing the death rate climb is starting to make people a little nervous about what exactly are they taking and why is it killing people. Well, we spoke, the last few years about the side effects. And for some individuals, the side effects may be, I'm a little nauseous or I'm constipated. But for others, they're going into bowel obstructions or ileuses, or they are going into full-on pancreatitis. A pancreatitis is an inflammation of the pancreas. That could turn into infection, septic shock, organ failure. And so, sorry, my nose is running. These are things that we take seriously. And if you're taking a medication to control diabetes, and the side effects are worse than the benefits, or the risks are worse than the benefits, we immediately take you off and we put you on something safer for diabetes. But a lot of these individuals are using it for weight loss. And because we have a huge explosion in people who are non-diabetic using these medications for weight loss, we're going to be getting new data. We don't necessarily have a lot of data on non-diabetics taking the medication, but it definitely is something that needs to be studied as quickly as possible, because people have been now using these medications through Wegovy and Zepbound, the weight loss counterparts of these medications that don't necessarily have the data in non-diabetic, thin, alcohol drinking, whatever, individuals. And so when people say, but Dr. Daliah, what's the difference? Okay, somebody with diabetes and not diabetes. So it's their sugar levels. Not entirely. If you look at a patient pool of those with diabetes and those with that do not have diabetes, one, they could have different genes, because some people get diabetes genetically, some of them get it environmentally because of insulin resistance and weight and food choice. But also, if you have somebody who is a well-controlled diabetic or somebody with diabetes, and they are following a diet and they are avoiding alcohol and they are using a medication, that's a different subset from somebody with diabetes that is not in control, or somebody with diabetes not taking care of themselves, or somebody who is just taking it for weight loss. And so you can't just say, well, in diabetics, it's fine, so it's fine in non-diabetics. What kind of a diabetic were they? Type 1, type 2? Now they have type 3. You can't just assume that you fall under one category that's already been studied. So there's been 107 fatalities, up from the 82 that the British Medical Journal reported back in February. This had been reported by doctors and patients. I'm not sure how a patient could report the fatality, but apparently this is from doctors and patients. And it's both the Mounjaro and Ozempic. The findings come from the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, the MHRA, and they confirmed that 10 of those people died from pancreatitis, which is the life-threatening inflammation of the pancreas. They're investigating to see if this is more gene-related, if they could identify who are the people that will be more inclined to get the side effect, because that's kind of what we need. This whole precision medicine, if you take a statin, is it going to affect your liver? Is it going to cause body aches? Or is it going to do exactly what it needs to for your cholesterol? There's genes and testing that they could do to see who some of these medications may work better on. So I'm dying to see that sort of data. I think we need it. But there was a death of a nurse from Scotland, 58 years old, who suffered multiple organ failure, went into septic shock and pancreatitis after taking just 2 doses of Mounjaro. Mounjaro works on 2 levels as opposed to Ozempic or semaglutide on 1 level of the GLP agonist. And so the Mounjaro, many people are asking for, or the Zepbound, because the weight loss is a lot more aggressive. But again, I mean, how do we know that that's the safest thing for you? So I believe that drug, there was another drug, Saxenda, the liraglutide. There's been 37 deaths since 2010 from that medication, I believe. So what do you do? Well, when you look at these numbers and you look at the millions of people taking it, it's still rare. But we need to know if you are at risk, just like with birth control. So, there was a patient whose gynecologist put her on birth control, and she would come to me for acne and other things, and she ends up dying after a birth control change that her gynecologist did, because I think the gynecologist thought she needed more estrogen to control her periods, and she goes into pulmonary embolism, she makes blood clots, and then she ends up dying. And so I recommend, and I know this isn't something insurance wants to pay for, but I recommend that we all get tested to see if we carry the genes or the propensity to blood clot. If we do have factor V lead-in or other sort of conditions that could make us clot more, maybe we need to rethink the estrogen. In fact, those individuals undergoing transgender transitioning, you should really be tested to make sure you're not at higher risk of clots, considering the amount of hormones you need to be on to prevent your body from its biological progress. And the amount of hormones needed could have side effects. So for those of you that are looking at these medications for weight loss, again, I tell you the same thing. Understand that we do not have enough data saying you could be on it lifelong. And we do have data saying when you go off of the medication, there's a good chance you're going to gain the weight back. And so you need to decide, are you on these medications for lifelong weight loss? Are you on the medications just to jumpstart? And you're going to work on your hunger, and you're going to work on your metabolism, and you're going to exercise, and you are going to be fully prepared to go off the medication if you have a side effect? Are you going to be able to afford the medication? What happens if you can't get the medication because it's in short supply because everybody's on it? But talk to your medical provider of if it's the safest thing for you. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Don't go away.
This is an urgent announcement for anyone that's $10,000 or more in debt. Before you make another minimum payment, you need to know there are special programs that can completely free you of your debt. Total Financial Freedom can help you become debt-free in months instead of years. Resolve your credit card debt, signature loans, department store cards, internet loans, and timeshares. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020 for a free consultation. For 16 years, Total Financial Freedom has helped thousands get out of debt. You can feel confident when calling because Total Financial Freedom is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. Battling for years and years, stuck in the endless cycle of minimum payments could take decades. You have the right to get your debt resolved and substantially reduce your monthly payments. Call Total Financial Freedom now at 800-878-6020. That's 800-878-6020. 800-878-6020.
Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
The cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Dali, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So one thing that really gets me is when we have an issue that could very easily be solved and very easily addressed, but politics gets in the way and continues the chaos and the drama. And so, I look at what's happening with Planned Parenthood and Medicaid and the abortion issue, and I think politics and this country is making it much more difficult than it needs to be. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Keep everybody out of it. Don't force taxpayers into it, because taxpayers don't want their money going to abortions. Don't get the government involved. Don't leave it between a person who is deciding on keeping the baby or not, the father and the doctor. We have turned a very delicate, private, very difficult decision to end a fetal life that should be private, medical, not only support while considering the decision, but support after the decision, as we've had many individuals sadly regret. This is something that doctors know how to manage. And instead, it somehow got all, where now your next door neighbor has an opinion, and they do have an opinion because their tax dollars have to go to it. So now everybody's making an opinion about something that's really, really private. Well, it got more complicated when Planned Parenthood started getting tax dollars. Planned Parenthood is an amazing sort of network that provides birth control and gynecological exams and breast cancer screening, although I don't think they do mammograms, but somehow also got tied into all of this because they get tax dollars and they perform abortion services. So now we have an entity where the Supreme Court had to decide, can a state whose citizens do not want tax dollars going to abortion kick Planned Parenthood off the Medicaid provider list? The Supreme Court today ruled they can't. The reason why this case came to be, let me just read you really quickly, all right, is this was Medina versus Planned Parenthood South Atlantic, where the state decided to exclude providers that provided abortion services from Medicaid because they have a law that tax dollars and taxpayers do not have to pay for abortion services. Now, but people say, but Planned Parenthood do also non-abortion services. So why can't a patient still go there? Well, back in July 2018, patients who pursue healthcare at Planned Parenthood would not necessarily have Medicaid paying for it because they were not on the state's Medicaid program. Why? Because there's a state law that bans the use of public funding for abortion. But Julie Edwards, a patient in Planned Parenthood South Atlantic, argued that this violated a section of the Social Security Act, which gave Medicaid beneficiaries the right to get medical care from any qualified provider. Now, I knew when I heard this that this might not necessarily go their way, because Medicaid, if you decide to pick a doctor across town and say, all right, Medicaid, you have to pay for that. If that doctor isn't on the Medicaid list, Medicaid won't pay for it. Medicaid has to approve. They have to make sure you're following the law. They have to make sure, you are in good with the board. They have to make sure you don't do Medicaid fraud. Medicaid doesn't necessarily cover every provider. Medicaid has a list of providers you could go to that they will pay. But I could go to any provider, not necessarily. So Medicaid is allowed to pick and choose who they want on their list. And so when I saw that, I was like, no, it won't be able to be, whoever is on the Medicaid list is where Medicaid will pay. So if Planned Parenthood is no longer on the list, then Medicaid has the right to say sorry. So it went to the Supreme Court saying, well, you can't do that. You can't, unchoose somebody based on some of the services. And the Supreme Court, basically upheld that. So what is the future of Planned Parenthood? Well, Planned Parenthood gets a lot of money from the government. And Planned Parenthood does a lot of services, but if it's government money and taxpayers aren't all in agreement, then, is there a simpler solution? So one is to separate the abortion services from Planned Parenthood and the non-abortion services, where if Planned Parenthood still wants to get Congress dollars and taxpayer dollars, they have the second entity where they could still provide the care, but it then allows taxpayers to not feel like their money is going to abortion. Or the abortion services is funded by all the charities and we're at a point now where if somebody wants to have something done to themselves or have something done, whether it's cosmetic surgery, whether it's something medical, whether it's something psychological, rather than them paying for it themselves, we're in a position now where people need other people to pay for it. If this was your own personal decision and you're paying for it and you don't need anybody else involved, they aren't involved. But somehow we got to the point where people can't afford their own abortions. And it's not just a couple abortions being done. We have, on average, 1 million women needing abortion services. So now it's become a much bigger issue. If we were only talking about 50 a year, the average doctor and patient and charity can handle that. But who is going to pay for 1 million abortions a year? And if somebody doesn't find that okay or ethically or aligning with their religious beliefs, they don't want to be a part of a fetus making it no, we're not talking about life of the mother. Life of the mother, rape, incest, state laws protect that. But we're talking about voluntary termination of pregnancy. Then, of course, there is always going to be this debate. So why can't we end the debate? Let's get the taxpayers out of it. Taxpayers don't want to pay for abortions. There might be some that do, but then they could be donating money, or they could be using, I don't know, maybe we figure out a way where there's tax credits, but there can be private, there could be funds that could go for individuals that need that. But to have where we are now is you have an entity such as Planned Parenthood, whose majority of the services are not abortion. The majority of their services are medical care. And they exist because of tax dollars. Now, that's also interesting. So I'm a little confused if it's not a government-run health entity, why they have such an amount of health dollars. That also is kind of being debated. But if it's private run, then it's private run. Yeah, and medical clinics and hospitals do get tax dollars if they qualify based on the rules. And if those rules include, look, you have to be, up to date on your certification. You have to have board certified providers. You have to not provide abortion services. Planned Parenthood could have that second entity. And then the entity that provides the abortion services funded either by self-pay, by donations, by benefactors. Trust me, there's plenty of people that want to help support abortion in this country where we don't have to involve the taxpayers. And so when people say, well, Planned Parenthood's going to die, it's not going to die. If Planned Parenthood could be very vibrant if we figure out how to get the taxpayers away from the abortion part of it. So if they want to provide abortion services, it's like Planned Parenthood B. You have Planned Parenthood A or Planned Parenthood B. But we drag in everybody and their mother to a situation that is really, really private. And if you ask the average woman who is considering terminating a pregnancy, they don't want their neighbor involved. They don't want their boss involved. They don't want people knowing. Just like going to, remember Governor Gavin Newsom was really mad at Walgreens because some of the pharmacists did not want to provide the abortive medication. Why is Walgreens involved in the first place? The doctor prescribing the medication can dispense it out of his office. So people feel like there's no privacy. Somebody planning to abort their child or abort their fetus has to go to half a dozen different people who then know what she's doing. Why can't it just be her, the daddy, and the doctor? The doctor could dispense the medication, but we drag everybody else in, and it's a mess. So I think there's a bipartisan approach, and it's not that difficult. 1-877 Doc Daliah.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
in many states, the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts. Due to a cleaner burn, there are less hydrocarbons and particulate matter in your exhaust. This reduces the blockage of your diesel particulate filter. Using Diesel Extreme generates 83% less DPF regeneration. The 6-in-1 Diesel Extreme formula also includes the most concentrated detergent on the market, lubricity enhancer, water demulsifier, rust and corrosion inhibitors, and a fuel stabilizer.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, Fine Farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. So we've been told for a while that a flesh-eating worm and fly, an insect, I don't think it's necessarily a worm, is coming across the border, being brought in through migrant caravans. This happened last year. That can cause some pretty bad devastation on people's skin. And it's become more of an epidemic. And we have some more news today on that I want to share. So Daily Mail says this invasive species of flesh-eating flies has been discovered moving towards the U.S. border, taking the same route millions of migrants took to America in recent years. Now, this fly is called the New World screwworm, and it lays hundreds of larvae in the wounds of animals and people. They can hatch within hours and then start consuming the victim's tissue, hence flesh eating. The infestations cause deep, painful wounds. These wounds can become infected and then can result in death. According to Daily Mail, officials in Mexico have discovered several cases in the country's southern states of Chiapas, Oaxaca, and Veracruz, all of which were part of the migrant caravan route used by millions to cross the U.S. border illegally over the last decade. Researchers fear there may be no way of stopping the flies at the U.S.-Mexico border, and they'll start infesting the South within 2 decades due to rising temperatures. Now, research indicates that the states at risk are Texas, Florida, Louisiana, states along the Gulf, and that these can actually kill our cattle and people by 2055. Now, they say the threat of widespread outbreaks among people in the South, they say, although the threat of widespread outbreaks of NWS among people in the South, U.S. There's a typo, would quickly feel the impact of this killing local cattle. I think what they mistyped this. What they were saying is, even though we might not see deaths of people, we might see it earlier in cattle. Although I've been told that it was already in the United States. The CDC back in 2024 discussed myiasis, which was a parasitic infestation of this fly larvae or maggots in human tissue. And so even though it's found in South America and the Caribbean, they were already preparing that this was coming to America. So if you have lesions and that you are healing and you aren't sure what they are, if you have skin wounds or sores that are worsening, if they're painful, if you're bleeding from an open sore, if you feel the larvae crawl or move or hatch, which is really freaky, get this looked at. If you see maggots around the sores, if there's a very bad odor, this could be the screwworm. Now, beef and dairy prices could rise because fewer cattle can mean less milk available. They would have to cull the animals. So this is something that's pretty concerning. They say screwworms first became a major problem for the U.S. back in the early 1900s. It cost $200 million, or roughly $1.8 billion today, in infected livestock, according to the University of Texas at Austin. But they said we wiped out the species by 1982 by sterilizing the male flies using radioactive gamma rays so they couldn't produce offspring with the females. The first human case of an NWS infestation or screwworm sore was found in a 77-year-old woman from Chiapas in April. Health officials were able to stabilize her condition because they were able to use antibiotics. But another man in Chiapas got it after a dog bit him. And he had fever, intense pain. So we could treat these. We just don't want it in our country. New World screwworm is known as Cochleomya hominivorax, or better known as man-eater. The female flies could lay up to 200 to 300 eggs at once, up to 3,000 in their lifetime. Infestations can be visible on the skin. So do we have it here in America? Well, right now they think the last case was in the 80s, but they feel that over the past decade, with the way the border has been, that yes, it can be here already. And if these flies lay 3,000 eggs in their lifetime, and the male flies are pretty horny, and this could be a big problem. So I think it was it Alexander Mayorkas or Becerra, during the Biden administration, they had said that I believe 2 in 5 migrants were ill with something, or they had something that a medical condition, whether it was hepatitis, whether it was cholera, whether it was typhoid, and so we were aware, even in the Biden administration, that things could be coming into America. And so the tuberculosis is something that I have been, hoping public officials are watching, because we don't vaccinate for tuberculosis here in America because it's not endemic. But a lot of these migrants who came from other countries could have carried tuberculosis, whether it was latent or active. And if they're gotaways or they're not being screened medically like we used to do at Ellis Island, then unfortunately it could spread. But I didn't necessarily get on my radar flesh-eating screwworms. And no surprise, it's interesting. We keep thinking about the border from a cartel aspect. or from a humanitarian aspect or from a criminal aspect, which is obviously what's on everybody's mind. We want to be there to help refugees and asylum seekers. We want, like, I'm a first generation American on my dad's side. We want to be a place where immigrants can come and become Americans. On the other end, we need to make sure that border is airtight so we don't have wolves in sheep clothing. We don't have cartel members. We don't have Chinese spies. We don't have Iranian supercells. So we need to do our borders smartly. But one of the other reasons we keep forgetting to talk about as it pertains to our border is health. The reason why borders get closed, as we saw with Australia, as we saw with Trump and COVID, as we saw with China and Japan, is because they don't want infectious disease hurting their community. And a big role of epidemiology and public health is sequestering, quarantining, and bordering. And so that's why, when we talk about Ellis Island days and immigration, a big part of that was the medical exams, because they wanted to make sure plague and trachoma and other illnesses were not coming in and then affecting the population. If that was the case, then they weren't doing their job. And they used an island that at least there was a barrier. And they were pretty thorough medical exams. But also back then you didn't have the computers to do the very thorough criminal checks. But their questions were pretty simple. Do you have money? Do you have a sponsor? Do you have a job? If you don't, you can't come. And so now that we have a much wider border, we have a very overwhelmed, border structure, and we still don't have the wall. We have to understand that not only are we concerned about public safety and national security and criminals coming in, we have to be concerned that we also can have infectious disease. And I've warned you guys before, tuberculosis is making a comeback. And we're seeing more and more cases in areas where we didn't necessarily have the medical screening done of migrants. And tuberculosis is one of the number one killers across the globe. Other countries vaccinate for it. We don't, because we haven't had to worry about that much until now. Tuberculosis, a cough that doesn't go away, fatigue, weight loss, coughing up blood, chronic fatigue. Those are things we need to look out for as well. All right. Watch out for the screw worm. 1-877-Doc-Dolly.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit, and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
As an organ donor, your story doesn't have to end. The good in you can live on. In fact, you could save up to 8 lives and restore sight and health for many more. Sign up right now online as an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You'll be happy you did. And just maybe, someone else will be happy too. Go to organdonor.gov. It saves lives. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
All right. So who's your daddy? I've always found that phrase. Oh, there was that song. Who's your daddy? Who's your baby? Who's your honey? Who's your man? I love that idea of people calling Trump the daddy. I think it's cool. I mean, from a dating perspective, I didn't like it. I don't like the Oedipus complex sort of or Freudian suggestion that a lover is your daddy. So I never liked that in the dating world, but I kind of like this daddy title for Trump. I don't know why. I think it's funny. And I don't believe that the NATO Secretary General necessarily called President Trump his daddy, but he alluded to how, people look at Trump as daddy as it pertains to, him getting Israel and Iran to agree to a ceasefire, getting people to come to the table. And so, interestingly, there was a video that I think the White House put up, hey, daddy's home. I think it was the backdrop of Usher's song. And I'm not going to sing it. But this Trump had a good trip in the Netherlands. He had a good trip. And I loved when he said Putin asked, what he could do to help with Iran. And Trump's like, I don't need you to help with Iran. I need you to help with you. Okay. We got to get the war between you and Ukraine to stop. Trump has shown that he's a badass. It did take the need of military force and our badass military. And I commend the soldiers for such an amazing feat. And I criticize the media for trying to use a preliminary intel leak to insult their abilities. They're so anti-Trump that they're going to be insulting our military and, worrying the world that giving the world false information just because they want, to not give Trump the win, or the marking of, the tag that he did something good. But Trump has gained this momentum and gained this sort of, shall we say, reverence that you got to go through him and you have to make sure he's happy. And if he's not happy, it's difficult. Look at how he handled the presser, where some journalists from Spain were asking him questions. And he's like, Spain doesn't want to pay their part as it pertains to NATO. Good for him for making sure that America isn't always getting screwed. Why should America pay for everybody else's security? Why aren't the other countries paying more? They're charging us more. They're obviously getting the money. They have the money. But I believe Spain didn't necessarily, was, I guess, one of the only countries that didn't necessarily at the time decide to pay more. And so he went after him. And you don't want to be on his bad side. And so that, maybe that is daddy-ish. I disagreed with him getting mad at Israel after Iran, after the ceasefire was announced and Iran fired missiles that killed a family of 4 and injured multiple people in a civilian area, and Israel deciding to go after their radar capabilities. I did disagree with Trump yelling at Israel like a kid because, Israel has every right to defend themselves. And I understand Trump wanted a ceasefire, but, you can't just fire missiles into civilian areas, kill people without there being a response. Israel also has a right to be the daddy in the Middle East as well. They have a right to protect themselves. But my guess is Trump dropped the F-bomb before he realized what exactly occurred. But the ceasefire is still holding. And so Trump wants to move to get Ukraine and Putin to the table and get that addressed. And it sounds like he had a good meeting with Zelensky, et cetera. But, this peace through strength is important. And I think, Trump, being able to overcome the reputation America had under the Biden years, he's done a good job. I know the left has called him Taco, where they say he's chickening out, and I didn't see any evidence of him chickening out. I think Marco Rubio is doing a fantastic job. Pete Hegseth. I mean, he's got one hell of a team. And if you've noticed, you haven't seen as many firings as you did the first term. The first term, he was new at politics. So he had to inherit a team of people who knew what. Now he knows what he's doing, or he has more experience. So he can handpick his team. Pam Bondi, I mean, he's got a team that he doesn't look like he's letting go. And so, and they're getting stuff done. And so the NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said, Daddy has to sometimes use strong language. And I guess that was after the F-bomb. And, he said, I didn't call him Daddy. But I think people just want to make a big deal about that. But Trump does have this now reputation of he needs to be okay with it. He's kind of running things. And he's running things so that there's peace, so that there's not going to be nuclear war. People are like, oh, he wants war. He wants war. No, I don't think he does. I really think he wants the ceasefires. I really think he wants the Russia-Ukraine war to stop. I think he does not want China invading Taiwan. And I think he wants North Korea to just stay in their own little, room and just sit there, suck your thumb, and don't become Rocket Man. And so I feel, as a mom, as an American, as a doctor, safer. I feel a lot safer now. In fact, I'm supposed to be flying to Israel in the next couple months. I feel safe doing it. If the U.S. did what we saw, I mean, where the nuclear capability was destroyed, and they can make Iran keep their end of the ceasefire, then Israel's back to school, back to work. They're able to live life. This which is another reason why my mom is losing her eyesight, and so I want to make sure she gets to see Israel, because she never has. So I'm going to take her. For me to feel comfortable taking an elderly woman to that country, it shows I feel safe under Trump, Netanyahu, the current situation. So you're going to see the media. Listen, I like also teaching Democrats strategy as well as Republicans. Okay, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I use common sense in how I feel about things. And what the Democrats need to do is use common sense. If there was a move that was good, in fact, some of the Governor Lombardo, Republican governor of Nevada, had supported Israel and America's strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. Jackie Rosen and I believe Senator Catherine Cortez Masto also agreed with Iran not having the ability to have nukes. They, though, want congressional approval in the future, although, America had to act and act fast. Waiting for Congress to approve something when they're screwing around with the big, beautiful bill. I understand why Trump made that move. But even Democratic senators, using common sense, saying, look, we have to, protect Israel, America, the Middle East, and we have to make sure Iran doesn't have nuclear capabilities. So there's a way that Democrats can be very smart, very popular in their thinking and in their approach. Now, as I said, there's so many things bipartisanly that Republicans and Democrats agree on. But if your plan and campaign is always anti-Trump, you're not going to win. 1-877-Doc-Daliah. Don't go away.
you believe with all the recent violent protests, looting, and destruction, some areas are considering either defunding or abolishing the police? At a time when America's neighborhoods need the protection of police the most, some elected officials would rather create more chaos by playing politics. If you're sick of elected officials caving in to demands of the radical left, you're not alone. It's time we stand up and declare our support for local police. The majority of police officers are important partners in protecting our God-given rights. If you prefer freedom over chaos, then learn how you can help protect the local police that serve your community. Call today and request your free Support Your Local Police info packet. Dial 800-JBS-USA-1. That's 800-JBS-USA-1. Request your free Support Your Local Police info packet by calling 800-JBS-USA-1 today.